Hello, my name is Robert Dean Steele, and this is your daily Bible class or your commentary on the Bible. Now, today we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 19. Now, we're going to find ourselves in a little bit of controversy because the cultural norms of today would say, well, Jesus is right out to lunch. But you know what? We're more concerned about what the Bible has to say about cultural issues and social issues than what man has to say, or even the cultural norm or the political norms today. Well, it says, now as it came to pass, Jesus had finished saying that he went from Galilee into the region of Judea, just beyond the Jordan. Now, the great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. So Jesus left the Galilee, went down to an area which is east of the Jordan River, down near, of course, on the other side of Jericho, etc., etc. And there he is. He heals people. Now, the Pharisees came to him and said, well, they wanted to test him, and they said, is there any reason for a man to divorce his wife? Well, Jesus answered and said to them, have you not read that in the beginning God made them male and female? So, first of all, here is the first problem that many people are dealing with today, and that is, of course, gender. People nowadays are saying, well, there really isn't an assigned gender. Well, we know that as far as God is concerned, yes, there is. In the beginning, God created male and female. Biologically, we see that. Of course, culturally these days, that's not the way it is. Nowadays, we have these gender reassignment people and activists saying, well, that's not how it is. Well, the Bible is very clear on that, and so as well is genetics. Now, he said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. Now, there's some groups out there who say, well, Jesus never addressed the area of, basically same-sex marriage or same-sex couples. Yes, he did. Jesus said that God made basically, for this reason, a man leaves his father and mother and joins to his wife. His wife, in this context, is not a man, it is a woman. And so it doesn't matter what the people of the world say today. It doesn't matter what the activists say. And those who would say, well, Jesus never talked about it, Jesus did talk about it. He did talk about the fact that it was and is God's desire and God's aim that it would be a man and a woman. A man leaves his father and mother and cleaves to his wife. That is God's perspective and God's standard. He said this, so they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. So basically, Jesus is also dealing with the area of divorce. He's saying that you shouldn't be divorced. Now, I know that there are many people who say, well, there's many reasons why people should divorce. Well, you should be working on it all that you can, so the last thing that it would. Well, they said, then why did Moses give them a certificate of divorce and push them away? Jesus was giving them God's standard. This is the way that God views it. And you have to understand, Jesus, of course, is God with a face, and Jesus did and said the will of the Father. So basically, Jesus is bringing God's perspective on it. Well, he said, Moses did that because of the hardness of your heart. He permitted you to divorce your wives from the very beginning. Now listen to what Jesus says. He says the reason why people are getting divorced is mostly because of selfishness and hardness of heart. And that's why Moses did it. He says that's what most people get divorced is because of that reason. But he says, let me say this. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. For whoever marries her is also divorced, commits adultery. So basically he's saying this. The only clause for divorce, as far as God's concerned and as far as Jesus is concerned, is marital unfavor or unfaithfulness, I should say. Now, Paul puts it also in his writings that it would be for two people who are Christians and non-Christian. And if the non-Christian wants to leave, then that should be another area for divorce as far as Paul and Jesus are concerned. And he also talks about remarriage, and he says, listen, you need to be careful concerning the area of remarriage. And I know there's lots of factors that people are involved in. And as a Christian, if your spouse leaves you because of that, I guess you have to have an area of conscience on this one. And his disciples said, it is, in this case, it would be better if a man never married. Well, Jesus said this, all cannot accept this teaching, but only to those who have been given. He says the teaching that has been given, not all the people are going to accept it, but only those to whom it's given, to those who would understand and those who would want to abide by God's rules. He says, for there are some eunuchs who were born this way from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs that were made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves for the kingdom of heaven forsake. But he who is able to accept it, let him accept it. He basically says there are people who decide to be bachelors or become celibate for whatever reason. He says that is their choice. He says the little children then were brought to him, and he said he put his hands on them and prayed. But his disciples rebuked him. And Jesus says, don't let the little children. He says, let them come to me and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and departed from them. So here we have a whole bunch of things that Jesus has been talking about. But after it was all said and done, after Jesus had addressed these social issues, and we need to understand that Jesus did address the social issue of gender reconstruction. Jesus dealt with same-sex marriage, and Jesus also dealt with the area of divorce. And it's not an easy accepted situation when in the world in which we live in, because we have all these pressures coming on people and on Christians as well. But Jesus is very clear on this. The last thing that Jesus says is, don't let the little children not come to him. He says the kingdom of heaven is for them and for those who are like childlike faith. And he laid hands on them, and then he departed from that particular place. Well, tomorrow we're going to talk about the rich young ruler. Just some thoughts for you today from the scriptures, here on your daily Bible class or your commentary on the Bible. You have yourself a great and godly day.